Um,
So
so
this,
while we're waiting to start, Amy, do you want to do our kind of housekeeping-y things, and then I'll maybe give everyone a sense of what kinds of questions came in
sure,
by category, and then we can decide where to start?
sure. Um, well, we're pleased to have Kim Wozniak, um, and with us tonight. She's a very experienced mosaic artist, and we hope we'll also get Bonnie Fitzgerald to join us as well. This is the second time they've presented um, to NEMS last year. We did another Make It Mosaics Q&A, which was really interesting. I think everyone learned quite a bit from it. Emily is going to do the ask the questions, and sh- she may ask you to unmute yourself so that you can clarify your question if need be. But meanwhile, we are recording this, so we want to limit the amount of background noise. So unless you're talking, stay muted. Okay.
Do I
Um,
need to have my chat window up or no?
No, you're fine without it. That's why I'll be moderating. So,
Okay.
here's what I'm thinking about process. We got some questions ahead of time as people registered. We asked if they had questions, and I think some of those came your way, so you could
Yeah,
get,
a while ago.
yeah, but not all of them
I
either.
don't remember
Don't worry. So I
them.
thought what I would do is start by asking those questions on people's behalf.
Okay.
And we can use that as a starting point for conversations. And then if you have further questions, follow-up questions, you want to go deeper on whatever subject we're talking about, you can all feel free to either unmute and ask a question or type more into the chat. And I'll try to keep an eye on the chat and the written questions. Kim, I'm hoping that's sort of, it's okay if we're a little bit more casual about it. Does that work
Yeah,
for you?
it's totally fine. I'm pretty casual and off the cuff, so I work way
Great.
better that way than having a program.
Wonderful. And so the questions that came in already, I tried to categorize them a bit. We had some questions about grout. We had questions about substrates, some things about adhesives, some things about actually tiling or piecing, questions about hanging, and a couple of questions about like tessera and the materials you might use. So I don't think I want to start with grout until Roberta is on because she had a big question there. But is there another category that any of you would like to begin with? This is your chance to vote. Or Kim, you can choose.
Yeah, I don't care.
Okay.
I'm ready
All
to
right.
wing it. That's how I am. I'm just like now nervous because Bonnie's not answering my text either. So
Well,
it's
don't worry.
kind
You've got this. And we were
it's
also
kind of
thinking if neither of
unusual.
you
So
showed
then
up.
I get worried about her that something else is going on that I don't
Yeah,
know.
that's true. Well, if you need to step out of the conversation at any point, just let us know. But
I will.
hopefully she's all right and just forgot all about it.
Yeah.
So let's start with substrates. this is this is a category that we have some very specific questions and some broader ones. So here's a question. What types of products are available similar to Ouija board, and which ones work best for outside? What do you think?
Okay, well, most of them are going to tell you they're not for outside, even though they are, like Ouija board even says that now, because I think it's a situation of everybody wants to cover their butts and not take responsibility for stuff when they put it outside.
Mhm.
So, from my perspective, if it has a expanded polystyrene core, and this, if we're talking about lightweight stuff, right?
Mhm.
Expanded polystyrene core and pretty much any material over the top of it, whether it's like, so Go Board has like a fiberglass fabric on it, some do. Um, and then there's Curdy board and currently the best available product to us is Hydro Block. That's what we put in the easy frames, and it's what I'm using for whatever outside if I'm gonna use it. It's green polystyrene and cement covered like Ouija board is, right? I don't like the Go board because it's fiberglass fabric and it's itchy. So if you're working across the board, you you gotta put a skim coat on so that it doesn't get on the sides of your hands and your arms and stuff. So for me personally, I look for the products that have a cement face on them and are extruded polystyrene. Now I also have like a whole wainscoting going on in my garage, and in that case we use Durarock. But if you read the thing for the Durarock, it says it can't go outside exposed, right? So for over 30 days or something like that. So of course I put it on my garage, but I didn't do it right away. And but I did skim coat it the next year, and it's been skim coated for 2.5 years and it's fine. So Durock is good if you're like screwing it to the building. You know, that was part of my construction process on my shop. So
Yeah.
I think that you should use what's readily available to you for the most part and not use wood outside and other substrates like Aerolam is available, but it's expensive and you have to find it.
Yeah.
I think for most of what we're doing, you know, it's either small installations or whatever. I think that there's, you know, plenty of backer boards available for us to use for that.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks. Okay, so I have two substrate questions that came in, or questions that I decided were about substrates, but really they're about sort of overall construction techniques. So can we dive into one of those?
Sure.
All right. So someone asked, do you have any tips for making stepping stones that will withstand weight, moisture, etc.? They'll probably come in for the winter using slate as a substrate and thin set. So
So everything will work except for the slate, right? Because slate, the way slate is formed, it comes apart. Like if you go to Home Depot and go through the pile, there's a bunch of them that are either cracked or split or not even, right? So you can do all the right things. That slate's not going to hold up outside and not going to hold up being walked on outside, especially because it has the opportunity to get water between the layers. No matter what you do, it will. You know, it's one thing to put it in your house because you seal it in your house and it's not ever in any kind of prolonged water condition, right? And there's no temperature changes in your house more than 10 degrees for the most part, whether it's no matter what time of the year is. But I live in Wisconsin and it can be a, you know, 40-degree temperature change in one day. And anybody who lives on the East Coast, I'm sure it's the same for you. So even if you brought it in some point over the summer or even spring or fall, it's going to get wet. It's going to absorb water and it's going to delaminate the slate.
Yeah.
That's how I feel about the slate.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Other than that, all them things in there, you know, it's a good concrete paver from a cheap one from the home store and tile that goes outside. I don't put any tile that doesn't go outside everywhere, ever outside. Even though I bring stuff in, I still treat it as if it won't for two reasons. One, because I live in a pretty big temperature swing here. And the other is because one year I'll forget and it won't get brought in until it's too late.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So the other substrate question that's really also a construction question, someone was asking how would you build a bird bath pedestal form with cement and wire? Now, I think this could take an entire week-long class to really get,
I
but
would I would say the first thing I would tell you is to go buy Sherry Warner Hunter's book.
yeah,
The whole directions are in there.
it's true, including the recipes for the concrete.
Right.
Yeah.
Everything you needed to know about building your own bird bath for outside is in that book. Outside of that, I'm not about building my bird bath because if I want to build bird bath, it's because I want a specific shape or something because I like the concrete, right? So like I've made them, but I carve them and I make cooler different shapes, right? And so then I want the concrete exposed. So that's why I'm doing the work of the concrete.
Mhm.
We have Stein's Garden Center here, which has awesome bird baths that are high fired ceramic and it's not glazed and you can not worry about sticking stuff on it. And that's what I typically am doing the bird baths on. If
Mhm.
somebody wants one or I'm making one for myself or somebody else, I use those. I like them. I've never had one fail.
Mhm.
And again, I bring them in for winter, but I don't believe I even need to, but I do because I do.
Mhm. Mhm. If that question belonged to any one of you, feel free to add, but I think that's a great answer. Um, all right, was that you, Lori? Looks like you're trying to unmute. No? Okay. All right. Um,
Hi. What was the name of it? Sherry Warner Hunter?
yes.
Yeah. Um,
Sherry with two RRI.
yeah.
Or-
I think it's called Working with Concrete.
Well,
I
she
can
has a
probably
few.
have that book in my hand in a second and show it to you if you just give me 1 second.
Oh, sure, sure.
She has a couple of books and they're all amazing. Just for any of you who haven't already seen them. She's also a great teacher. So if you have a chance to take any classes with her directly, I highly recommend it.
Thank you so much.
I'm not sure if this is the first edition or the second one. They're similar.
Can you, yeah,
Oh, creating with, okay, thank you so much, Kim.
Like if you want to build something with concrete, garden ornaments, this is the book.
Yes. Perfect.
Yep.
Oh, there's even a bird bath on the back, see?
Oh, love
All right, let's move on to talking about hanging things. So someone was asking if you forget to install hanging hardware on Ouija board before you mosaic it, what are your hanging options? Have you run into that before, Kim? Do you?
Yeah, yell at people for doing it all the time because they think I'm some kind of miracle engineer that can all of a sudden figure out how to hang their 30 their 30-pound mosaic on the wall without it. Really the only way you can do it is to frame it. You have to frame it because you can't just like now stick something on the back of it. I would not. I mean, I know people have done epoxy and whatever and stuck hangers on the back of it. I personally, if you didn't put the hangers on, you need to buy a floating frame and glue it into there or something
Mhm. Mhm.
because you need metal or wood or something substantial to be able to hold it. The other side of that is I feel like a lot of people are way freaked out about how much their shit's gonna weigh, right? They're like, oh my God, I'm making this big piece. And I go, well, how big is it? Well, 24 inches square. Yep, that's not big, first of all. And and if you bought a picture with a frame and glass over the top of it, it would weigh nearly the same as your mosaic. Because if you're using vitreous glass tile, it's 1/8 of an inch thick. So is that sheet of glass over the top of that picture is 1/8 of an inch thick. They weigh the same. Just because you're gluing stones and glass tile down doesn't mean all of a sudden this is going to be this enormously heavy thing. It's going to be about the same weight as something that has glass in and a wood frame around it.
Mhm.
So, you know, just think about stuff like that. Yeah, if you're sticking 3/8 inch material on and thick material and a bunch of rocks, yeah, then it's going to get heavier. But generally, mosaics weigh around 3 pounds per square foot. So for me, that's using Mexican multi. It's about 3 pounds per square foot. So then if you add into that your backer board and maybe a pound or two of thin set and grout, that's how much your whole piece is going to weigh.
Yeah. Thanks. So I see that Bonnie has joined us, which is wonderful. Welcome.
God, I'm so sorry. There were so many emails floating around. I had this on Thursday.
Oh, well, I'm really glad you're here. And Kim has been carrying the two of you beautifully.
Oh, she does that.
Um,
They're all
so
construction questions, so that's my wheelhouse, Bonnie.
Oh, okay. Give her a hammer.
we started with those. And actually, so I do want to say we have a lot of questions. I'm just watching the clock. We're actually like almost a half an hour in. So
Okay.
I might be a little bit pushier when it comes to saying let's move on, because I just want to make
Okay.
sure we at least touch on things. But this has been
I'm
great.
not in a hurry, so
Okay. Oh, so maybe even if we needed a couple minutes after.
And I'm
Okay.
just getting started, so whatever.
All right, so then we'll just go and we'll see how long it takes. Trying to decide. So we were just so the other hanging question that we got ahead is how is there a way to secure Ouija board to exterior walls so it can potentially be removed later?
Oh yeah, we do that all the time. There's a couple ways you could hang it like a picture, right, with a French cleat, or just like a picture. Or Kim actually went with me to Mexico. If any of you follow me on Facebook, and we just screw right into the wall and take pictures so we know where the screws are. And in theory, and I actually have moved artworks, not there, but for clients. If you have those pictures, you in theory can pry off what you glued on top and get in there and unscrew it and remove it if all you did was screw it to the wall.
Great.
So,
Do you
yeah.
have a favorite concrete screw, actually, or a brick screw, like masonry screw?
Well, it depends on what the wall is.
Yeah.
So it
Yeah,
isn't really
it's
one
a
size
lot.
fits all.
I asked the question and it's concrete.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
so there's so many different kinds of fasteners. You can drill a bigger hole and put an anchor in that the screw goes into. There's things called rolls that you just pound in and they hold in on tension. So I think that you have to find something that you're comfortable with. And remember, it doesn't have to be gigantic if you're putting more in, because each screw you put in is carrying another part of the weight, and the weight's being distributed across the entire piece. So you don't need to have 60 screws in to hold it onto the wall. A lot of times you draw cartoons when you're doing a bigger piece, right? So those screws should be planned into that cartoon, and that cartoon becomes part of the history of the piece that stays with the client, and a copy of it with you, and all that should be on there. One other way you can do it, and I just got to grab something.
Oh, there she goes. There
She
she
already
goes.
grabbed Sherry Warner Hunter's book for us, so
Oh,
the back and forth.
yeah,
So-
there's,
Can you see this?
oh yeah.
This is framed. All right. It's
Uh-huh.
a welded frame that's custom made for the place that it's going. Sorry, I'm too close. And then see, this French cleat's already welded into it. So then you can just work on it and take it to the job site. And, here's the other cleat, and you just screw that to the wall and hang it up. So this one's kind of small. Usually I'm not doing these frames until it gets to be bigger, but this is a custom frame that we have made for different customers. Or if anybody's worked on the Mosaic Marathon, you
Mhm.
probably worked in those frames.
That's great. Thanks. That's brilliant to actually weld the cleat on. I hadn't thought of that. Okay, you ready for some adhesive questions?
Sure.
Ooh.
All right. So one question is, what are the best adhesives for use on glass projects? And do you do a glue wash to prevent grout seepage under the translucent glass?
I don't do that. I've done like one thing that's glass on glass. So Bonnie's better equipped for that.
So I go back and forth. There's a couple of different products. The tried and true for me actually has been clear silicone, even though it's messy and it smells and there's a management challenge with it. I did a really big glass on glass piece fairly recently, the last few years, and used MAC glue, and it worked really well. Part of it was opaque glass, some of it was transparent glass, and it went well. But I know other people have had challenges with MAC glue, just like with Wellbond, where it may not dry in the center for a really long time, maybe if ever. And actually, my friend Kim explained to me the why is because here's the piece, and the glue is under it, and that it's the air that's drying it from the outside in. And so at a certain point, when is it too big of a piece to use either of those adhesives? That's why I think for me, I've had better luck with the silicone. And so I've heard about the Wellbond wash and people doing that. I don't really
I
get
have actually done that. So
Yeah, have you done that?
well, maybe not in the way that they're doing it. They're doing it kind of after the fact, right?
Yeah.
The Wellbond wash. Yeah. So I have done, they're really old. So they survived all for 15 years, probably. A couple of glass on glass pieces in which I put the Wellbond on, right? On the piece, somewhat thinly. And I don't care if it dries. Like I would let it dry. And then the stuff that I'm putting on the piece that I adhere on is more tacky, and they seem to seal together quicker and dry. But that being said, I don't work in big pieces, so all three of those pieces that I did that were glass on glass, my tessera was only a half an inch square. But I put it, if you put it on the piece and it dries, as soon as the new stuff goes on it, they like meld together.
At one point, I also learned from it was a workshop with Kelly Knickerbocker. Now, I don't think this is back in the day when she was doing stained glass, and she actually used and introduced a workshop of like using a UV lamp and UV glue. Super challenging to get it to do all that you need to do, but that's another option, and that did dry really clear.
Right, but that stuff's like a kind of harsh chemical too, isn't it?
It's a whole thing. Yeah.
It's like a whole thing.
It is, but they are using it on our teeth these days in some dentist offices, so it can't be too toxic.
Yeah, but that's different than getting it all over your fingers and everybody's wearing gloves and protecting stuff, which people I don't think really do. Well, I'm not a really good safety conscious person, but whatever.
All right, so another adhesive question, sort of adhesive question. Can epoxy sculpt or magic sculpt be used for outdoor installations?
Oh, epoxy sculpt, yeah. I use it for all kinds of things. It holds stuff that can be used in a decorative sense, so it's really it's a really interesting product.
So I'm going to give you all of the other adhesive questions at once because they're sort of overlapping. So we have questions about what adhesives do you recommend for indoor projects versus outdoor projects, also specifically for a bathroom mosaic, and do you have a favorite adhesive for delicate found objects, in this case, old LP records on mirror?
Oh, Matt, that's
like
multifaceted question now, isn't it?
Well, it's a few questions. I'm just asking you all the things about what do you use to stick stuff to stuff.
Well, the most popular is thin set, is a properly rated thin set for what you're doing. If, you know, for sure, ceramic, any kind of stone, you know, utilitarian, a floor. For a decorative art piece, even thin set, depending on what your tessera is, right? But if, let's say you want to do a beautiful stained glass piece, in theory, if it's for inside, you could use well bond, but well bond's really not archival. So in some circles, that's the word that's thrown around, but it's not really archival because it's a white PVA glue, you know, and it could reconstitute with water. It could, but
It
you know,
does.
it does.
Just
Yeah.
so. Like I'm not a well bond person. So for me, my two adhesives are thin set and thin set. Inside pieces, I work with pre-mixed thin set called Simple Set from Home Depot.
Yeah.
I love it. It's got a good consistency. It's strong, and I've never had a failure. That being said, not putting it in my shower or anywhere that water goes. I might do it on I did do it. We did it on Jesse's backsplash to put his glass tile up. It's easy to work with, and I don't have to mix it. And I can just go to the bucket and scoop a spoonful out whenever I'm ready to work. The other thing I use is thin set and thin set for the job. I would be challenged to give people advice about how to tile their shower, right? I think that it's a lot of responsibility for me that I don't want to take. So I would be going to the manufacturer about it. If you're putting a border 4 feet up, yeah, then I wouldn't be worried about it, but I would be using thin set. The construction of a shower is pretty elaborate thing. You know, it starts way before the tile. And not all installers are good at it even.
But back to the well bond girl, because I do use well bond and I'm a pretty big advocate of it, particularly for interior and people who are just starting out. And if you're using stained glass, it's challenging to do thin set with stained glass because the glass is so thin. It's, you know, it's a delicate material. I think we just have to be mindful.
And that's true because I don't work in stained glass a lot anymore. I used to, and I used to use well bond more than I do now. So yes, if you're using stained glass, it's an easier material as long as you're, you know, not making pavers.
Yeah. So Kathleen, I saw your hand. Did you have a related question, or was this one yours?
No, I was just gonna say, I've done a lot of glass on glass projects, including sinks that have been installed over 30 years. And I use silicone, clear silicone, and I make a small bed of it in small areas, and it's very tedious. And you have to clean whatever squeezes out between the tiles before it dries, so you can make sure the grout gets between the tiles. But you know, it's not for the faint of heart. And sometimes I end up having, after I grout something the first time that's a glass on glass with silicone, I will have to go back and with a sharp X-Acto knife clean out whatever silicone squeezed out that I didn't see. And I also work with a light table underneath my piece so I can see very clearly where the silicone is popping out between the tiles and try to get it picked out with a pick before it dries. And I usually have to double grout. I grout it once, see where the issues are, clean it, grout it again. And it's time consuming. But I can tell you, I mean, my sinks have to be completely waterproof and nothing can come out. No tiles can come out. And I've had pieces that, you know, like I said, they've been installed for almost 30 years. So
yeah, I did do parade animals, fiberglass parade animals, and I did use Lexel, which isn't a silicone, it's clear and rubber based. But you're right, when you use those adhesive, you're doing some cleaning, and I like the Lexel because I can wipe it off with acetone and clean it up, and then yes, when you grout, you always find the places that you didn't find the first time you went through everything.
Yeah, I just use like a GE waterproof grout. You know, you did the small tubes just because it's very delicate work, and I make my sinks with pieces that are minute, so it's you know, it's a challenge. And when you're working in a curved surface, it's also even more of a challenge. So, but the other thing I was going to say too is I do a lot of shower work. I've made a lot of mosaic showers, and you have to use thin set, and you have to use a thin set that is rated for wet areas. But I always try to encourage the client to put weedy board for a backer board, because it really does work well in showers, and it's waterproof. And then I use a thin set and a grout that's made for wet areas.
So
It's
here's my
very
thing.
difficult.
Here's my thing about the showers. So I had a client that wanted a insert for the back of their shower. And so I'm making the insert. You're responsible for all the rest. And they put their tile in, and their back, whoever did this, put the backer board in, put the tile in, and it all looked fine. I went there at the end and installed my part. And then like a year later, their shower was leaking, and they blamed it on me. And it wasn't my fault because they didn't tape and seal their stuff up correctly, right? So
Yeah.
that's why I think that professionals need to be involved.
Oh yeah, I have a contractor that I work with quite a bit, and he goes and puts all the backer board up. And but he usually, if it's a renovation, I tell the people that unless they rip the whole thing out and start over, that I'm not putting a mosaic up, because if you don't know what's behind the walls, be it moisture, be it mold, nothing's going to stay up. And
Right.
so I usually, if somebody calls me and says, you know, I want to renovate and I'm going to do this, and they want me to just throw a piece of like party backer or something up and then put a mosaic, I'm like, I don't want to get involved, because to
Right.
me that's cheaping out, and that means I'm probably going to have trouble getting my final payment.
All right.
So it's like red flag, red flag, red flag.
So those are good reminders, definitely, about the liability pieces and the responsibility. So we still have a few categories of questions. We've got grout, we've got like tessera, and then some things about placing pieces.
There's also still a couple of questions in the chat. Did you guys do those before I got here about the well?
Well, we had, let's see. Okay, so I do see Carrie had said to me there's a UV light glue that Kelly Knickerbocker uses, but she's not exactly sure what the name is offhand. Oh, sorry, there's a question about the weld bond wash for those who haven't done it. Can you describe that a little bit more? When and how you do
I've
that?
never done it. What I've heard about it is that basically it's a 50-50 wash. It's a watered down wash, and you go over the entire glass on glass piece, and you let that well bond soak under. Yeah, I think the theory is that it's soaking under any of the tessera that you didn't have a full seat of the previous well bond. And then you wipe it off. The only time I've seen this well bond wash is the student showed up in a workshop and said, what do I do with this? Because she put the well bond wash on and then like went to bed and didn't wipe it off. And it was a hot mess. And I really didn't know how to help her.
That'll turn white, and she can peel it right off with a razor blade.
So, but the theory is that thinned down well bond is seeping under and closing up any areas so that you don't have any grout seeping under your glass.
So you do it after you've already made the glass on glass. It's a
Yeah, like they go
finish
through
thing.
Yeah.
And put it in all the cracks, basically. So I think that people are really they're looking at their mosaics too closely, right? Because no one's gonna ever see, another person isn't gonna walk up to that hanging in a window somewhere and go, oh, look at them 4 places where the grout seeped behind the glass. It's like, see, so my advice is, I don't care what you're doing, stand back once in a while and look at it like you never saw it before, instead of like every 3 spots on your window where the grout seeped under the glass.
Thanks, Kim.
You're
And
welcome.
Mila, I see there's a question here in the chat about using weld bond on stainless steel backing and then grouting, and whether those can be used outside. So,
I would not choose that.
yep.
Metal. If it's metal, I would choose silicone most of the time.
Yeah,
And well bond can't go outside.
right. So that one's,
Sorry.
no, that one stays inside. All right, more adhesive questions before we move on?
I have one.
Yes.
I've heard vehement arguments, both for and against using mesh as a backing for outside pieces that are done with thinset, and would like a little more clarification on why people think it's a bad idea and why people think it's a good idea. Some people say, oh, you shouldn't have anything between the piece and the concrete, but how likely is it to fail?
Not any more likely than an installer who's putting it up that it comes sheeted on mesh.
Right.
If you're using the right mesh, because I don't think everybody does use the right mesh. And so the mesh has to be able to go outside. First of all, the mesh, like the stuff we sell, is made out of fiberglass. It's not going to deteriorate. And it's also made so that thinset won't eat it.
Mhm.
So it's about using the appropriate mesh. It's not about the other thing.
So Kim, other than it being fiberglass, what about the mesh makes it impervious to thinset?
It's called alkyd resistant.
Alkyd resistant, okay.
So like if you go to the store and you go in the drywall department and you buy some mesh, yeah, that's not going to work. You have to get it so that it goes with cement. It'll say AR on it, or it will call that out. The whole front of the building's got mesh all over it, and it's all still up, so.
Right.
I've had installers tell me that they didn't like the idea of mesh if it was like a fountain, if it was something that was going to be exposed to a lot of water. And they felt that that was when they felt stronger about that. Well, I don't want anything between the tile and the surface, because water creates a whole other.
Yeah, I think that's part of the reason that Trend prefers to face mount their tile, because a lot of it goes in pools and then there is nothing in between. And the other method of mounting that happens is that they use this epoxy spot between the tiles instead of all over the back of it. So that this is from a manufacturing standpoint, right? So that there is nothing between the tile and the backing. I think a lot has to do with the environment that the stuff is in, but I've never had the mesh fail personally.
Thank you.
No, I just want to tell you something about that too. I've done a lot of repairs on pool mosaics, and 9 times out of 10, it failed because the tiles were on mesh. And people, when it fails, they automatically get some type of like super glue or something and try to repair it. But the problem is the mesh. The mesh creates one more layer that can cause a failure in a wet area. So I've seen
I
it.
can totally see that. And so the biggest manufacturers that I work with, which are Trend and also the Smalty Factory, which also makes commercial glass tile, neither of them back mount tile. They both face mount it. And so
Yeah, I've done a few
most
where
of their tile goes in pools.
I've used the front face paper method to make the repairs, because some of it's really complicated. The mosaic it's not just, just tiles, it's
Right.
designed. And so I front face mount it and then fix the areas. But
Yeah, and I will say like the sidewalk inlay that I did at our cottage. Like I'm a face moaner a lot of times on paper anyway. I
Yes.
know I know it's a little to think about, but once you do it, it's not so scary.
So
That's
Susan,
how I
now
work
you've
most
heard
of
the
the
pro
time.
and the con.
What?
I was saying to Susan that now she's heard the pro and the con for
I have, and
you make
it
your
was
own
really
call.
helpful. Thank you.
So speaking of mesh, maybe we can tackle this one quickly. So there's a question about whether anyone's used sticky mesh for a vitreous glass mosaic project, and if so, did it work well?
I don't even get what sticky mesh is about. And I know that the people who sell it are really nice and decent, hardworking people, but I don't get it. Because why do I need to have this temporary sticky? I just am going to use proper mesh, like Kim described, and then I'm going to use proper adhesive to glue my tessera onto the mesh and then properly install it. So I don't get the concept of the sticky mesh.
I don't use the sticky mesh. I've never even seen it.
All right, so
I
that's
mean,
I
other
actually
than
posted
paint.
that. I posted that today on our website because this client that I'm working with right now is really wanting me to use sticky mesh. And I'm like, she goes, I heard this is like the greatest stuff. I was like, I don't work with that. I don't know why you would want to use it. But yeah,
I've
it
never
doesn't seem
worked
like
with
it
it
makes
either.
sense. I don't know why she wants to do it. But anyway.
I'm pretty old school.
Let's see. You were mentioning Kim that you work with a small tea manufacturer, and there's a question on here. How would you compare Mexican small tea to Orsoni in terms of waste or adhesive?
I used the same amount of I use the same adhesives no matter which one I'm working with. And there's different reasons for using them in my opinion. So I use them both. And if it's important that my finished project's flat, I use Mexican small tea. If I want the textures and the ribbon colors and all that, then I'll use more Italian small tea, but I still use Mexican small tea because all I have to do is turn it on edge and it's like the same, right? So I love both of them. It just is about the application and the finished aesthetics of the piece, in my opinion. If you want to install Italian small tea and you want it to be flat when you're done, then you need to work in reverse.
Okay, thanks. All right. We have a big-ish case study question about grout that came in, and I was hoping that the person who asked it would jump on the call, but she didn't. But I still think it's going to be of benefit to everyone. So I'm going to read you what she said. She also shared a couple pictures that I can share if it would help. But so she said, I tinted my grout with powdered green pigment. It looked great when it was wet, but it dried badly. Different tile vendors told me different things. One said it was efflorescence. One said I used too much water and compromised the integrity of the grout. Several said I could use stone and grout enhancer to achieve that rich look. The piece is going in a shower, so the exposure to continual water may affect the solution. And she's sent a couple pictures to show the sort of chalky initial and then what it looks like sealed. Do you have any thoughts on that? And would you like to see the pictures?
I'd like to see the pictures, but it reminds me of a situation I had, and I had to call Kim for her advice, and her, not exactly, but like a lot of similarities what you're talking about. And her response was, oh, for God's sake, it could be so many things that went wrong, or it could be so many, just so many things are wrong, you know?
Like all of those things that you said are possibilities of it, right?
Right.
Or just possibilities of our invitations for failure. And so, yeah, there's just so many things about it. So, you know.
So if you were showing the pictures, would you be showing them in the chat?
I'm about to share the screen. This is a close-up of can you see? Yeah, you can see that, right?
Yeah.
So that's a close-up of it after it dried initially.
Okay. And what color green is it supposed to be?
Well, I'll show you now the the one once she sealed it, and it gives a better sense. So hold on.
Well, and first and foremost, if we're going to start messing around with any kind of colorants or custom unique things, for God's sake, you got to do a test outside of the piece. You know, take a bunch of those materials and make yourself some little test and work all that out before.
So this looks like it's wet,
I
right?
believe that that's the sealed version. So she must have put like a sealer or a tile enhancer on it.
Okay.
And
So
we
it's got
only,
the color that she's looking for?
I think so. I think she was worried about the sort of irregularity and the whiteness in the first.
Well, I think there's probably like 6 possibilities, which you've read. It could be some efflorescence from the water that she used to mix it with. It could be the batch of grout. It could be that there was too much water in it, because it looks to me like it's everywhere like that. Also, like Bonnie said, there should have been a sample piece grouted and let dry and cure before you like smeared all on your client's thing. Because sometimes you'll get like one little spot of efflorescence, right? And that could be seeping from the substrate behind, depending on what that is. But also sometimes like grout and all those cement products, thin set, are all have a lime base in them, right? And if one little pebble of lime got somewhere that didn't get all smashed up when they manufactured that and is stuck in there, now you made a thing and you put it outside. Like I have one of my spirit poles from like 20 years ago, and it looks like she's crying all the time because that one spot effloresces. And that could have been in the cement mix that I use. It could have been in the grout. It could have been in anything. And it's never going to stop.
Yeah, that is very helpful. And by the way, the full piece she sent a picture of, and it's beautiful. So even though she's upset about the little details and how the grout looks,
And again, you're kind of close to it at the moment. You know, you got to back up some days and take a deep breath. I've been in all those positions going, oh my gosh, I really screwed this up. And then you just have to find the resolution for it, and it looks good. It might not look the way you thought it was going to look, but it still looks good. And there's a way to fix almost everything, you know, almost.
So speaking of grout, we got a question from someone else saying, what is the correct consistency for grout?
Well, I often tell people kind of like brownie batter, on the thicker side of brownie batter. Then you're going to let it slake for, you know, the manufacturer usually it's somewhere between 5 and 10 minutes. And it's going to thicken up a little bit. You're going to stir it again, and it should go back to that consistency. I prefer my grout to be a little thicker, just because I do. But you don't want it. It's not watery or anything like that. You know, brownie mix.
I try to get an idea, like if you're using a different grout that you haven't used before, I try to always advise everybody, including myself, to read the back of the bag, because then you kind of get a sense of whether it's 2 to 1 or 3 to 1 or what they want you to mix it. And going back to the grout problem thing too, I just wanted to mention that the amount of colorant that she added may have affected the grout. And also you can get away with not having that efflorescence. Like I live in a area that there's a lot of lime in the ground, and so by using distilled water to mix your grout with, because that's got all the stuff out of it.
Oh, interesting.
Fine to mention that.
Thanks.
And what were we talking about after that? Oh, the
consistency of grout.
the consistency.
Consistency. I was going to food. I was going to dessert. You know?
Right. Yeah, I agree with Bonnie. Like brownies, I like to work thick, and so it kind of sets up not in 2 hours, right? I want it setting up in 15, 20 minutes so I can be cleaning.
Great. All right. So officially, we only have 4 minutes left, and I have 3 more questions here. Actually, 4 more questions. I'm trying to think about how to pace ourselves. Would you all be willing to spend an extra 10 minutes?
Oh, well, I am because I was late to the party, so I'm good.
Yeah, I'm
what
not
do you-
going anywhere.
Okay, so then let's do that. And if any of you have to hop off, you can maybe watch the recording later. So, so this one's darn big. Wait, let me just see. All right. Okay, I'll ask this one. So there was a question about if has anyone created a base, maybe using polymer clay or something else for jewelry other than using the metal ones that are available. So have any of you created bezels for mosaicing?
Well, I have not, but I've seen lots of people who have, everything from repurpose something, the lid to a jar, to making their own bezels out of wood with a lathe or some kind of carving tool. People working in precious metal clay and then mosaicing onto the precious metal clay. Even just using epoxy sculpt as the base because it's so strong. So it's kind of it's almost without limit what one could do. It's just thinking out of the box about it.
Yeah.
And what do you really wear around your neck? Like how heavy is it going to be?
Right, like I did some that I took slices off of copper tubing to become the outside. So there's all kinds of stuff.
Yep. Great. Thanks. That gets everyone's mind going, I'm sure. So here's the big old question that you could spend days on, but what are things to keep in mind when you're creating andamento?
So understand something. I didn't even know that word till about 15 years ago, and I've been making mosaics since I was 20 years old. So you do the math. So I think it's really important because it provides a structure, but I think it's up to each individual to figure out what they're going to do with that information, respected or not respected. I think if we look at a lot of mosaics, chances are you're attracted to the ones most that respect the line and respect Adamento in some way, that some portion of the artwork is respecting that. But do I really think about it a lot? Like I'm not an intuitive worker in that way where I can get lost in the building the wild, fabulous, wonderful line that I see other people do. I'm kind of envious of them. I'm just trying to get to a pleasing piece and honor those rules as appropriate for that piece. I don't know if that helps.
Yeah, I'm probably not the biggest andamento user either. I'm probably working on it more now than I ever have in my life, just because I feel judged by those who are good at it. Not because I feel so that's my need to conquer it, right? It's really but yeah, my work doesn't have a lot of andamento in usually. I'm getting better at it, but I like to do crazy paving. Really, I'm not a big crazy paver, but if I'm going to do it, I need to do it well, right? Like there are rules, and when you do a piece and you didn't follow them, you will notice that you broke them. I try never to use triangles. The Italians, they don't like triangles. And I thought that was dumb when I first heard it. And then I started noticing them everywhere because as they pointed out to me that the triangle will draw your eye to it, and it does. So unless there's a reason for it to be there, you need to find a different way to cut the piece. So there's some rules I adhere to and some I don't. And some I'm trying to learn more about.
That's great. That was a really good summary from both of you. I'm sure whoever it is can think more about andamento and sort of explore other people's answers to that too. We have one question here about sourcing materials, but it's very broad. It's sort of like they want to know about material sourcing, weedy, stone, glass, etc. So I think I'm going to rephrase that and ask you, do you have any favorite sources for
I
material?
am the favorite source. What do you
I
mean?
do, Wits and Mosaic and Smalty.com,
I was
uh,
hoping you would take this opportunity to show off
you
your
know. Um,
self.
the other thing is not to be self-serving, but our YouTube channel talks about all this stuff, and we talk about where you can get stuff if Kim doesn't carry it or sell it, you know. So there's, I
Yeah,
think
if
it's
you
really it's important
if
that you
you
buy
would
the
have asked
right
me
stuff.
15 years ago, I could give you a list of places that I bought stained glass and stuff from too, but it's not my material anymore, so it's not something that I can advise about. And if just in case you are wondering if there's something that we don't carry that you want us to carry, just send me an email because I'll try and cram it in somewhere in this building. And I haven't really said this to very many people, but I did buy out a bunch of Maryland Mosaics material. So I'm taking 300 pictures and trying to figure out how to get all that loaded up. And it mostly is not a lot of new stuff that I didn't carry before, but I'm expanding carrying the little tiny 8mm tiles that everybody loves. And before we only had mixes, and now I'll have individual colors and the little dots because I like them too, and I can see a lot of projects with them. So yeah.
Great.
Other stuff like Weddy board and Go board and those sorts of things. If you're really looking for a large amount, go to those manufacturers' websites. They almost all have store locators. Some of this because we're kind of in bed with the tile trade. You'll get materials from tile distributors like Good Thin Set. Kim doesn't sell thin set; she doesn't sell grout. So you're gonna have to go to get those materials, either a home superstore or whenever I can, I go to a tile distributor because I'm gonna get a better knowledge base about what I'm gonna get my questions answered at a tile distributor more so than at Home Depot where, Joy
Yeah,
knows.
and so Doll Tile's not my favorite distributor on the planet, but I do work with them. And like this week, they're having a Ouija board thing there that teaches you everything you needed to know about Ouija board. So if you become, they really only sell to the trades, but you could probably get invited to their thing. And some of them will sell you one sheet and some won't. Another company that I buy from is called Insulation and Supply. Now, it sounds crazy to me, but they're across the United States and they sell all kinds of tile products, mostly, at least at my location. If you walk in there, it looks like a tile store, a tile distributor. And they have all the moldings and all the Ouija board, hydro block, and all that stuff. So don't be afraid to go to them the first time. A lot of times, even if they don't want to sell to you, they got a sheet or whatever in the back that's got a ding in it. And
That's great.
money's money.
Right. Good recommendation. So the last question that I have already from people is unrelated to mosaic technique, but the question is, Kim, do you know the plan for the Afghan scarf project?
Well, there's all kinds of stuff going on this week all of a sudden about it. We're trying to find a location for it. And I don't know why, but the Tacoma Museum of Glass called us this week and they heard about the project. And so they're presenting it. And so the other side of the story about the Afghan scarf is it's stored in 3 Chewy boxes currently in my office. And because I didn't want to assemble it until we knew where it was going to go, so that I could sort of plan the framing accordingly. And the Museum of Glass has been the first ones that are going, yeah, we get it. All the rest of them want a picture. I'm like, I don't have a picture. Or they only want, or they have a lot of rules that we couldn't get, or they're like 3 years out, right? Because we're really trying to find as permanent of location as possible. Otherwise, somebody's got to jump in again and move it. And so I broke my shoulder in March. And so we'll see what happens in the next couple weeks with the Tacoma Museum of Glass, because I'm really not capable of putting it together at this point.
Sorry,
I have to
I'm
get help.
motioning because I'm gonna go on mute for 1 second.
No, I'm on the phone. I'm on a meeting.
So
Good.
that's good. That's a useful update. It'll be good as someone who made a piece to find out eventually where it ends up.
Yeah, and we're also encouraging anybody that has any kind of at any kind of location to try and help us. I know that Madeline a long time ago, I asked her to, because from the beginning I said, I'll do everything you need me to do, but I'm not looking for a place to put it. I'll drive it there, I'll pack it up, I'll get it there, I'll put it together. But finding locations is not part of my skill set, right? I'm like a work person and not a administrative person very much. So they assured me they had that covered, but then nobody really covered it. And so I think that she sent a message out to everybody that was on the list that made one and said, we need your help to find a location, because she's like in Canada.
Okay. Well, great. So we are approaching 8:40 and I'd love to open it up for any final questions, comments, things you want to sneak in before we all say goodbye. Do any of you have lingering questions?
Oh, we must have did good. We answered everything.
Good.
This
But well,
was
I do
really
want to say
wide-ranging.
something to the group though. I have to, I give you guys so much credit because I get calls from, you know, different organizations trying to have meetings, and your group just rocks. You do regular activities and meetings are well attended and people are making cool stuff, and I see you all over social media. So kudos to you guys for keeping it up. I think it's great.
Thanks. That's nice to
Yeah.
hear.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're doing a great job.
It's easy to lose perspective, I think, you know, because we don't have at least I don't have other Mosaic groups to compare myself to or compare NEMS to, but it's a pretty great group of people.
Yeah, you're doing great stuff.
And Roberta, I see you came on. We did talk about your piece and grout, but you'll just have to watch the recording or chat with us later. If you all don't have more questions, I think we can probably say thank you and good night. I know more questions are going to come up, but I will refer you all also to Bonnie and Kim's YouTube channel. They have so many other questions answered. So if you're really just wondering about something and you don't have time to find them in person, check there first.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you both so very much for being here and just being so willing to to take the questions as they came. That was a whole lot of topics we covered in an hour.
Thanks
Keep
for
up the good work.
You're getting some thank yous in the chat too. So is Amy gone?
No, I'm here.
Oh, there you are. I'm sorry, I lost track of your little square face. Or your face square, I should say. Do you want to do any closing?
Just a big thank you, and we will send out the link to the recording to everyone who registered. And if Bonnie and Kim, if you would like the link as well, I'm happy to send it. And just a reminder that we have several webinars scheduled for May. The next, Diane Sonnenberg is going to be talking about demystifying commissions. And then we are going to have a webinar where we'll go through the call for art and answer your questions about the collaborative project. And we also have Gary Drostel talking about making some mosaic floors for a children's hospital. So a wide variety of subjects coming up, and we hope you'll join us.
And Amy, can we put a plug for the Charles River Museum?
Yes, go for it.
Okay, so soon-ish, in the next week or two, I hope, or maybe even sooner, you all should see an email about the project that we've mentioned. We're going to be making 3 large outdoor panels for the Charles River Museum of Industry and Technology. And so it'll ask you to sign up if you're interested in making a piece for it at home, but there will also be in-person sessions in the summer and fall when you can come open to community and tile other sections of it together. So keep an eye out for that. I hope some of you sign up, and either way, I hope I see some of you at the in-person community sessions for it.
All right.
So, thanks everyone.
Night.
you.
Thank you.
Bye.
There.
Bye.
Bye.